Hello and welcome to another Creative Co-winning video. Today we're going to look at lenses. Before we start anything, these lens cover here, and the lens cover at the back, rear and front, very important. Please just don't lose them, don't not use them, keep them, always use them, because they just keep your lens safe, keep any sand, dirt, dust, anything getting in. And I think it's ridiculous that loads of folk seem to not have them or use them. Just don't lose them, always have them. Now, basically the lens here I've got is one of two lenses. You've got prime lenses, which is this one here, which is a fixed focal length of 50mm, and zoom lenses, which I'm using for the camera at the back here, as you can see, zooming in and out. Now, I've got it set to the same as this lens here, which is 50mm. Difference between prime lenses and zoom lenses is kind of, your prime lenses are normally have a wider aperture, which means that or a lower aperture, which means you can take in more light and you get normally a sharper image because there's less components in it. Now, if you're using a zoom lens, because of the more components, the image is less sharp and it has a higher aperture, which means you can't let in low light. So these are ideal for low light situations and to get a clear, sharp image in that lower light. They're also ideal for getting you used to moving for a shot rather than just zooming in and doing zoom. You have to move, you know, especially for photography. It gets you in that zone of, I have to frame it with my body rather than just the zoom lens. Now, if I pop this in my hand here, I'm going to show you what 24mm looks like. You see how it goes really wide? That's the widest my lens goes. Now, this is the tail end of an extreme wide angle lens. They're normally between 18 and 24, and they're really good for showing off. So if my character was here, my character's over here, you get a lot of the background over this side, a lot of background space over here, so you can have close-ups at the same time as having background, especially with 18mm. But this also doesn't distort the image like you get in fisheye lenses, which is what the skateboard videos have, and a lot of like stylistic choices for dream sequences or when someone's drunk or under some substance. They normally use a fisheye lens to distort images and distort faces and make it all seem a bit more trippy. So if you don't want the distortion, 18 to 24 is your focal length you want to use. But if you do want that distortion, fisheye, which is basically below 18mm, is what you want to go for. Now, if I take it back into 35mm here, you'll see that between 35 and 50, which is, this is 50 and this is 35, that's what people would call a standard lens, and they're normally used because it's the closest thing to the range to what the human eye would see, and it makes that within that range makes someone feel present and in the film. So if you want that kind of feel like you are there and you're watching, or it's like an observation kind of thing, then between 35 and 50 is what you want to aim for. And it's a good way of doing a film. Some people even choose to just use a 35mm lens to film their whole movie, which is a style choice to make someone feel present and in the film and really involve someone in the plot. If I zoom right in, this is my 70mm zoom here. You see you get a lot of detail. It really goes right in. It's obviously not the most you can go, but it's in the tail end of a telephoto lens. So telephoto lens is between 70 and above. Well, not between anything, it's 70 and above. 70mm and above is a telephoto lens. Now I've got a 70 to 200, which is decent for zooming, but likes of wildlife photography and filming, they'll normally use they can use up to 1200mm. They have ranges of 400 to 800mm. So really high zoom. So they have really high zoom that is good for so singling out. If you use a zoom lens, a telephoto lens, you can use that to zoom right in on a character in a crowd, pick them out and make it clear to the audience who you're trying to show. So it's a good way to introduce characters or show the emotion of them maybe walking. Say if someone got a job and the character got the job that they were after, then you could pick them out in the crowd walking home in a busy street and show that. You could show their emotion, show maybe celebrating. you can also use it in a way, kind of Love Actually style. Say someone was chasing to someone's wedding or running to stop something, like catch someone, like classic scenes catching someone at their flight away because they'll never see them again, kind of thing. You can use the zoom lens by zooming right in on your character, like stand far away from your character, zoom right in on them, and that gives the landscape a really flat look, which means that when they look desperate and they're running really fast, it looks like they're going nowhere, and it kind of shows the helplessness and hopelessness of what they're doing. Now, there's also there's like two other types of lenses that aren't really, they're not too relevant, but they're basically, if I come out of this here and go back to 50, looks more like what you and I would see. There's basically one other, there are a couple others. They're more stylistic. It's lenses like macro. So everyone's seen macro. Macro lenses actually don't have a minimum focus length, so their can be anything. Any lens can be macro. It just means that they can take in fine, sharp detail, really close up to things, and things can come really, like my lens here is not macro. So the closer I come to it, there's a point where I can't focus. So if I try and focus on this, it's fine. But if I come in a little closer, I can't focus on that. That's too close for me. So this is as close as I can get here. And then when I zoom in, that's as close as I get. So that's not macro. Whereas a macro lens would be able to, I'd be able to hold it right here or be all the way back and zoom into it and get fine detail. So they can be any focal length. My 70-200 is actual macro lens, and that means it can get really fine detail when it's in close up, or things can be close to it and it can get really clear, crisp images. Now, another lens which the people use a lot is a tilt shift lens. There's a lot of tricks and tips of how you can do tilt shift without a tilt shift lens, but I always find them a wee bit riskier for your camera's health than anything else. But a tilt shift lens basically gives a camera that kind of dreamy, like fuzzy look, as if up the top here, and sometimes you get them down here, and it gives it a kind of, it basically takes your camera here from being flat into, it basically tilts it like that. So rather than being your camera, imagine your lens being like this, it takes the top, opens it like that, and that blurs the top half of the screen. And if you do it that way, it blurs the bottom half of the screen down here, and then it's back to straight. That's it, flat, normal, sort of, it's a normal camera would be flat like that. Tilt shift does this to your lens, so it takes your lens, it takes your look and goes like that, opens up more light down there, and it blurs the top and bottom. It also can be done side to side with special lenses, but again, tilt shift is kind of something you don't have to worry about. It's just a kind of effect that you can get with these lenses. They're more expensive and sort of look into it. We don't have any of them, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'm going to show you now. This is 50mm on my lens here. I'm going to show you real quick before I go what 50mm looks like on this camera, on this same camera, same settings, but with this lens, just to show you what the difference in the image, see if there's any difference. Okay, so now that I'm back, here is my zoom lens. Now you'll see that it goes all the way, it goes all the way 24, 70, and it just zooms out. It's basically a way of, zoom in there. It's basically a way of zooming in whilst filming. You see it has a 2.8 aperture here. And if you noticed on the last one, the lens I'm on right now actually has a 1.14 aperture, which means that it can let in a lot more light. It's a lot brighter, sharper in low light situations. But I just kind of want to show you what the difference is between 50mm prime lens and 50mm zoom lens. This is what you saw before was a 50mm set on here. So I basically took the zoom and moved it here. And that means that it was on 50mm, as you can see. And then this is what it looks like on a prime lens. So I just want to show you that. I hope you guys have learned something. If you've got any questions about lenses, you can put them straight into the Facebook group. And we'll see you all next time in the next tutorials. See you after.